The mop moved slowly across the black marble floor. Back and forth. Back and forth. The man holding it was thin and tired. His name was Kang Doha, and he was 38 years old. He'd have been cleaning this same floor for 7 years. Every day. Every night. The same black marble. The same cold walls. The same feeling of being invisible. Doha worked in the Crystalline Palace. It was the home of Emperor Varoth, the ruler of the Valorian Empire. The palace was beautiful in a cold way. Everything was made of dark stone and bright crystal. The ceilings were so high that Doha could not see them in the darkness. The halls were so long that his footsteps echoed for seconds after he walked. But Doha did not care about the beauty. He only cared about finishing his work and going home to his son. The Valorians had conquered Earth 20 years ago. Doha remembered the war. He remembered the fire in the sky. He remembered the ships that blocked the sun. He remembered running with his pregnant wife through burning streets. The humans had fought hard, but they had lost. Now Earth was called New Terra, and humans were servants. Doha dipped his mop into the bucket. The water was gray and cold. He squeezed the mop and continued cleaning. A group of Valorian guards walked past him. They were tall, almost 8 feet. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes were like yellow fire. They did not look at Doha. To them, he was not a person. He was just a tool that cleaned floors. This did not bother Doha anymore. He had learned to be invisible. Invisible people survived longer. He finished the west corridor and moved to the lower levels. These were the storage areas and machine rooms. No important Valorians came here. This was where Doha felt safest. He could work in peace and think about his son, Kang Tamin, 7 years old. The only reason Doha woke up every morning. Tamin had been born during the last days of the war. His mother, Sujin, had gone into labor while bombs fell around them. Doha had held her hand in a broken building while she screamed. Outside, the world was ending. Inside, a new life was beginning. Sujin had held Tamin for only 3 minutes. She had kissed his small head and whispered his name. Then she had closed her eyes and never opened them again. The birth had taken everything from her. Doha had walked out of that building carrying his newborn son in one arm and his wife's memory in his heart. He had walked through smoke and fire and death. He had found the Valorian Registration Center and surrendered. He had become a servant to keep his son alive. That was 7 years ago. Now Tamin was a quiet boy. Very quiet. In fact, Tamin had never spoken a single word. Not one. Not mama or dada or hungry or tired. Nothing. The Valorian doctors had examined him and declared him defective. They had suggested disposal. Doha had begged on his knees for 3 hours until they changed their minds. The doctors said Tamin's brain was damaged. They said he would never speak, never be useful, never be anything. Doha did not care what they said. To him, Tamin was perfect. His son's eyes were bright and smart. His son understood everything. His son just could not speak. Or maybe he chose not to speak. Doha did not know which. Every night, Doha returned to their small room in the servant quarters. It was tiny, barely big enough for 2 beds and a small table. But it was home. Tamin would be waiting there, sitting on his bed, drawing pictures on old paper that Doha had found in the trash dog. Doha would sit beside him and look at his drawings. Tamin drew strange things. He drew the palace. He drew the Valorians. He drew Earth as Doha had described it, with blue oceans and green forests. Sometimes he drew a woman with kind eyes. Doha knew this was supposed to be Sujin, even though Tamin had never seen her. Every night, Doha told Tamin stories. He told him about Earth before the war. He told him about mountains and rivers and cities full of people. He told him about music and laughter and birthday cakes. He told him about Sojin, about how she had loved to sing, about how she had dreamed of a son just like Timin. Timin would listen with wide eyes. He never responded. He never nodded or smiled or reacted. But Doha knew he was listening. He could feel it. Tonight was like every other night. Doha finished his work at midnight and walked through the cold corridors toward the servant quarters. His body was tired, but his heart was warm because he would see Timin soon. But then something happened. Doha took a wrong turn. He was so tired that he did not notice until he was already in an unfamiliar hallway. The walls here were not black marble. They were white crystal, glowing softly with inner light. Doha had never been here before. He turned to go back, but then he heard voices. Doha froze. The voices were coming from behind a large door. They were speaking in the Valorian language, but Doha had learned enough over the years to understand. He should have walked away. He should have run. But something made him stay. He pressed his ear against the cold crystal door and listened. "The resonance is almost complete," a deep voice said. Doha recognized it. Emperor Varth. "But we still need a catalyst. Without it, the weapon is useless." "We have searched the entire empire, my lord," another voice said. "The catalyst does not exist. The energy frequency we need is not found in any known species." "Then search unknown species," Varth said. His voice was cold and angry. "The resonance will give us power over life itself. We will be able to destroy or create with a thought. I will not abandon this project because of one missing element." "Yes, my lord. But what kind of energy are we looking for exactly?" There was a pause. Then Varth spoke slowly. "Pure emotional resonance. The kind that comes from deep bonds, connection, attachment. Our people eliminated such weaknesses long ago, and now we cannot produce the frequency. We need a species that still feels these things strongly." "The humans, my lord?" Varth laughed. It was an ugly sound. "The humans? They are weak and broken. They have no strong emotions. They work and they die. There is nothing special about them." Doha held his breath. His heart was beating fast. "Keep searching," Varth said. "The catalyst exists somewhere. We will find it." Doha heard footsteps approaching the door. He ran. He ran faster than he had run in years. He ran through corridors and downstairs until he reached the servant quarters. He did not stop until he was inside his room, breathing hard, his hands shaking. Timin was sitting on his bed, waiting. He looked at his father with those bright, silent eyes. Doha sat down beside him. He was still shaking. He did not understand everything he had heard, but he understood enough. The Valorians were building a weapon. A terrible weapon. And they were looking for something connected to emotions. He looked at his son. Timin reached out and touched his father's hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Doha felt his fear fade slightly. He felt warmth spread through his chest. He did not know it then, but that small touch, that tiny moment of connection, was exactly what the Valorians were searching for, and it would change everything. The medical bay was cold and white. Machines hummed softly in the darkness. Tubes and wires hung from the ceiling like dead vines. In the center of the room, on a hard metal bed, lay Kang Doha. He had been unconscious for 2 days. His face was swollen and purple. 3 of his ribs were broken. One of his eyes was damaged so badly that the doctors were not sure he would see from it again. He was a broken man in every way, but he was alive. The Valorian doctors had saved him, not out of kindness, but because useful servants were not easy to replace. Humans took years to train, and Doha was a good worker. It was more efficient to repair him than to grow a new one. Timin had not left his father's side. The boy sat on a small chair beside the bed. his eyes never leaving his father's face. The nurses tried to remove him several times, but he refused to go. When they pulled him away, he would walk right back. When they locked the door, he would wait outside until someone opened it. Finally, they gave up and let him stay. For 3 days, Timon held his father's hand. He did not eat much. He did not sleep much. He just sat there, holding on, waiting for his father to wake up. The Valorian doctors found this behavior strange. They had never seen anything like it. The boy was clearly suffering. He was tired and hungry and scared. And yet he refused to leave. Why? What was the purpose? His presence did not help his father heal. His touch did not speed up the medical process. It was completely illogical, but something else was happening. Something the doctors did not expect. Dr. Veth was a Valorian scientist who specialized in energy research. He had been working on the Resonance Project for decades, trying to find the mysterious catalyst that Emperor Varth needed. He had failed. Every species he tested produced the wrong kind of energy. The frequency was never right, but Dr. Veth had a new idea. He had heard about the human janitor and his strange behavior. He had heard about the beating and the way the man had crawled toward his child. He was curious. He installed special sensors in the medical bay. These sensors could detect psychic energy frequencies, even very weak ones. He wanted to see if humans produced any interesting readings. What he found changed everything. Every time Timon touched his father's hand, the sensors detected a spike of energy. It was faint, barely visible on the instruments, but it was there. And more importantly, the frequency was perfect. It was exactly what the resonance needed. Dr. Veth ran the tests again and again. He could not believe it. For decades, they had searched the galaxy for this energy. They had tested hundreds of species. They had found nothing. And now, in their own palace, in a broken human janitor and his silent son, they had found the catalyst. He reported his findings to Emperor Varth immediately. Varth came to the medical bay himself. He stood behind the glass window and watched the boy hold his father's hand. The sensors showed the energy spike clearly. What is causing this? Varth asked. We believe it is emotional bonding, my lord, Dr. Veth explained. The connection between parent and child. Humans call it love. Varth made a face of disgust. Love? That primitive concept? Yes, my lord. But it appears to produce exactly the energy frequency we need. The bond between this man and his offspring creates pure emotional resonance. It is stronger than anything we have ever recorded. Varth watched the boy for a long time. Timon's eyes were red from crying. His small hand held his father's large hand tightly. He looked exhausted and broken, but he did not let go. Why is the energy so strong? Varth asked. He is just holding a hand. It is a simple physical action. It is not the action itself, my lord. It is the meaning behind it. The boy believes that his touch helps his father. He believes that his presence matters. And the father, even unconscious, seems to respond. Look at the sensors. The man's vital signs improve slightly whenever the boy touches him. Varth leaned closer to the glass. It was true. The machine showed small improvements in the man's heart rate and brain activity whenever the child made contact. This is impossible, Varth said. Touch cannot heal. Belief cannot affect biology. This is superstition. And yet, the data is clear, my lord. Human emotional bonds create real, measurable energy. The stronger the bond, the stronger the energy. This father and son have an extremely strong bond. Possibly because the boy cannot speak, the connection between them had to grow in other ways. Varth turned to leave. Take the boy to the resonance chamber. Begin the extraction. Dr. Veth hesitated. My lord, there may be a problem. The energy comes from the bond. not from the boy alone. If we separate them, the energy may fade. Then we will take them both when the man recovers. Yes, my lord. Voreth stopped at the door. He looked back at the boy one more time. Something flickered in his ancient yellow eyes. Something that might have been doubt. These humans, he said quietly, they are very strange creatures. He left without another word. Inside the medical bay, Doha opened his eyes. The world was blurry and painful. His head felt like it was filled with rocks. His body was a map of agony. But through the haze, he saw his son's face. Timon's eyes went wide. Tears spilled down his cheeks. He squeezed his father's hand so hard it hurt. Tamina, Doha whispered. His voice was rough and broken. You are here. Tamon nodded frantically. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Just a small choked sound. Doha smiled despite the pain. It is okay. You do not need to speak. I understand you. He tried to lift his hand to touch his son's face, but he was too weak. The effort made him cough, and blood came up. Timon looked scared. He held his father's hand against his own cheek, pressing it there with both hands. I am okay, Doha said. I am okay. Do not worry. But he was not okay. And things were about to get much worse. 2 days later, guards came to the medical bay. There were 6 of them, all heavily armed. Dr. Veth was with them. The boy comes with us, Dr. Veth said. By order of Emperor Voreth. Doha tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body, but he pushed through it. No, please. What do you want with him? That is not your concern, human. The boy has been selected for a special purpose. Doha looked at his son. Tamon's face was pale with fear. The boy shook his head slightly. I will not let you take him, Doha said. The guards laughed. Dr. Veth looked at him with cold amusement. You can barely stand, human. What do you think you can do? Doha threw himself off the bed. He landed on the floor hard, his broken ribs screaming in agony. But he forced himself to his knees and crawled toward the guards, placing himself between them and his son. You will have to kill me first, he said. The guards looked at each other, confused. This human was clearly dying. He could not fight. He could not run. And yet he was still trying to protect his offspring. Why? What was the point? Your death would be inconvenient, Dr. Veth said. We need you alive for the experiment. Your bond with the boy is valuable. He gestured to the guards. 2 of them grabbed Doha and held him down. 2 others grabbed Timon. No. Doha screamed, Please, take me instead. Do anything to me, but leave him alone. The guards dragged Timon toward the door. The boy struggled and kicked, but he was too small. His eyes were wild with terror. He reached out toward his father, his mouth opening and closing, trying desperately to say something. Timon. Doha screamed. Timon. The door closed. The guards holding Doha released him, and he collapsed on the floor. He could hear his son's footsteps getting farther and farther away. He had failed. He had promised to protect his son, and he had failed. Doha pressed his forehead against the cold floor and wept. He wept like he had not wept since the day Sujin died. He wept for his son, for himself, for all the humans who had lost everything to these cold aliens who understood nothing about love. In the hallway, Taming was carried away toward the resonance chamber. Tears streamed down his silent face, and watching from a distance, hidden in shadows, Princess Velena felt that strange pain in her chest again. Watching the boy struggle, watching the father scream, she felt something crack inside her. She did not understand what was happening to her, but she knew she could not look away. Emperor Voreth sat on his throne of black crystal. He was very old, even by Valorian standards. His skin was dark blue, almost purple, and his yellow eyes had seen 1,000 years of war and conquest. He had ruled the Valorian Empire for 3 centuries. He had destroyed planets. He had enslaved entire species. He was feared across the galaxy, but lately, something was bothering him. It was a small thing. Insignificant. A human janitor who worked in his palace. Vorath had seen this human several times during his walks through the lower corridors. The man was thin and worn, like all humans. He pushed his cleaning cart and mopped floors and emptied trash. Nothing special. But there was something different about this one. Most humans cowered when Vorath walked past. They dropped to their knees. They trembled. They stared at the ground as if hoping to disappear into it. Fear radiated from them like heat from a fire. Vorath enjoyed this fear. It was proper. It was right. But this janitor did not cower. He did not tremble. He simply stepped aside, lowered his head politely, and continued his work. There was no fear in his eyes. There was nothing. Just quiet acceptance. Like a man who had already lost everything and had nothing left to be afraid of. This bothered Vorath more than he wanted to admit. "Bring me the human janitor from the lower west corridor," he ordered his guards. "The one with the cleaning cart." The guards bowed and left. Within an hour, they returned with Kang Doha. Doha stood in the throne room, his eyes on the floor. His heart was beating fast, but he did not show it. He had learned long ago to hide his feelings. The Valorians could sense fear, and they enjoyed it too much. "Look at me, human," Vorath commanded. Doha raised his eyes. He looked at the Emperor directly. This surprised Vorath. Most humans could not hold his gaze for more than a second. "What is your name?" "Kang Doha, my lord. How long have you worked in my palace?" 7 years, my lord." Vorath leaned forward on his throne. "I have watched you, Kang Doha. You are different from other humans. You do not fear me. Why?" Doha was silent for a moment. He knew the wrong answer could mean death. But he also knew that lies would be detected. The Valorians were very good at detecting lies. "I have nothing left to lose, my lord," he said quietly. "Except everything worth living for." Vorath tilted his head. "That makes no sense. If you have nothing to lose, how can you have everything worth living for?" "Because what I have is not a thing, my lord. It is a person. My son. Your offspring?" "Yes, my lord." Vorath sat back. This confused him. Valorians did not raise their young. Children were grown in laboratories and educated by machines. The concept of a parent caring for a child was strange and primitive to them. "And this offspring makes you unafraid of death?" "No, my lord. He makes me unafraid of everything except losing him. If I die, who will take care of him? That is my only fear. But that fear is not for myself. It is for him." Vorath stared at the human for a long time. He could not understand this logic. How could fear for another make someone braver? How could love create strength? It was backwards. It was illogical. "Leave," Vorath said finally. "Return to your work." Doha bowed and left the throne room. But Vorath did not forget about him. He ordered his intelligence officers to watch the janitor. He wanted to understand this strange human. Meanwhile, Princess Valena was also watching. Valena was Vorath's only daughter. She was young by Valorian standards, only 150 years old. She had pale blue skin and silver hair that fell to her waist. Her eyes were like gold coins. She was beautiful and cold, like all Valorians. But Valena had a secret. She was curious. Curiosity was considered a weakness among the Valorians. Proper Valorians accepted things as they were. They did not question. They did not wonder. But Valena could not help herself. She had always wanted to know more about everything, especially about the strange species that served in the palace. She had noticed the human. Janitor's son. The boy was small and quiet. He played alone in the servant garden, a tiny patch of dirt with a few sad plants. Valana had watched him from her window many times. He never played with other children. He never made sounds. He just sat in the dirt and drew pictures with a stick. One day, Valana went down to the garden to watch him closer. She hid behind a pillar and observed. The boy was drawing something in the dirt. It looked like a face. A woman's face. The boy worked carefully, adding details with the tip of his stick. His eyes were focused and bright. There was clearly intelligence in those eyes. Then the janitor came. Valana watched as Doha entered the garden. The boy looked up, and something happened that Valana had never seen before in her entire life. The man knelt down in front of the boy. He opened his arms, and the boy stood up and walked into those arms. The man wrapped his arms around the boy and held him close. He held him for a long time. He pressed his cheek against the boy's hair. He closed his eyes. Valana felt something strange in her chest. A tightness. A pressure. She did not know what it was. What was the man doing? Why was he holding the boy like that? What purpose did it serve? The boy was too old to need physical support. The action was inefficient. It was pointless thought, and yet the boy's eyes had changed when his father arrived. They had lit up. They had become warmer somehow, as if the man's presence made everything better. Valana went to her father that night. "The human janitor," she said. "The one you questioned today. He has an offspring." "I know," Vorth said. "My officers have already informed me. The child is defective. It cannot speak. I saw them together in the servant garden." The man held the child in his arms. He touched it. "Why?" Vorth shrugged. "Humans are primitive. They have strange habits. It means nothing." But Valana could not forget what she had seen. The image stayed in her mind. The man on his knees. The boy in his arms. The look on both their faces. 3 days later, something happened that changed everything. Timon was walking through the lower corridors, going back to his room. Doha was still working, and the boy often wandered the halls alone. He knew how to stay invisible, just like his father had taught him. But today, he was not invisible enough. A Valorian guard named Captain Drax was walking through the corridor. He was in a bad mood. He'd been punished by his commander for a mistake, and he was looking for something to hurt. He saw Timon. "You," Drax said, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Human child. Why are you in my path?" Timon did not respond. He could not respond. He just stood there, frozen. "Move, you defective creature!" Drax shouted. Timon tried to step aside, but Drax was faster. He kicked the boy hard in the chest. Timon flew backward and hit the wall. He slid to the ground, his small body curled in pain. Drax laughed. "Pathetic. Humans are so weak. Even their young break like dry branches." He pulled back his foot to kick again, but then a hand grabbed his arm. Doha had come around the corner, just in time to see his son hit the wall. He did not think. He did not plan. He simply acted. His body moved before his mind could stop it. He grabbed the guard's arm and pulled him away from Timon. Drax turned around, shocked. No human had ever touched a Valorian guard before. It was unthinkable. It was suicide. "You dare?" Drax said, his voice filled with disbelief. Doha did not answer. He just moved to stand between the guard and his son. His body was shaking. He knew what was coming, but he did not move. Drax hit him, hard. Doha fell to the ground. Drax hit him again, and again, and again. The other guards in the corridor came to watch. They laughed and cheered as Drax beat the human, but Doha did not stay down. Every time he fell, he got back up. His face was bleeding. His ribs were broken. But he kept crawling toward his son, trying to shield him with his broken body. "Why do you keep getting up?" Drax asked, confused. "You cannot win. You are weak. Just stay down." Doha looked up at him with swollen eyes. Blood dripped from his mouth. "He is my son," he said simply. Drax did not understand. He kicked Doha in the face. Doha collapsed and did not get up again. But someone was watching. Princess Velena stood in the shadows at the end of the corridor. She had seen everything. She had seen the human get up again and again. She had seen him crawl toward his child, even as his body broke. She had heard his words, "He is my son." That strange tightness in her chest returned. Stronger this time. Painful. She did not understand what she was feeling. But she knew, somehow, that what she had witnessed was important. More important than anything she had ever seen in her 150 years of life. The guards finally left, bored with beating an unconscious man. Taman crawled to his father and put his small hand on Doha's bloody face. Tears fell from the boy's eyes. Silent tears. He still could not speak. But his tears said everything. Velena watched from the shadows and felt something new inside her heart. Something warm and terrible and confusing. She did not know it yet, but she was feeling the first emotion of her life. The resonance chamber was the largest room in the palace. It was built deep underground, carved from solid rock and lined with crystals that glowed with strange light. In the center stood the machine itself. It was massive, a tower of metal and crystal that reached up toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Tubes and wires spread out from it like the roots of an ancient tree. This machine was the greatest achievement of the Valorian Empire. It had taken 200 years to build. Millions of workers had died in its construction. It was designed to harvest psychic energy and amplify it 1,000 times. With enough power, this machine could destroy planets. It could create new forms of life. It could make the Valorians gods, but it had never been turned on, because they had never found the right energy to fuel it. Until now. Taman was placed inside, a glass sphere at the base of the machine. The sphere was cold and empty. There were no chairs, no beds, nothing soft. Just hard glass on all sides. The boy pressed his hands against the surface, looking out at the scientists who prepared the equipment. He was terrified. But he could not show it. He could not scream. He could not beg for help. He could not do anything except watch and wait. Dr. Veth stood at a control panel, checking readings. "Begin the extraction process," he ordered. The machine hummed to life. The crystals began to glow brighter. Taman felt something pulling at him, like invisible hands reaching inside his chest and trying to take something out. It hurt. Not his body. His heart. His soul. The machine was trying to take his feelings, his memories, his love for his father. It was trying to drain him of everything that made him who he was. The sensors showed a small spike of energy, but it was not enough. The readings were far below what they needed. "The output is too low," a technician reported. "We are barely getting 10% of what we recorded in the medical bay." Dr. Veth frowned. "The bond. The energy comes from the bond. Without the father nearby, the boy cannot produce enough." Emperor Vareth watched from a viewing platform above. "Then bring the father." Guards were sent immediately. Within an hour, Doha was dragged into the chamber. He could barely walk. His wounds had not healed, and the journey had opened them again. Blood soaked through his bandages. But his eyes were clear and focused. He saw his son in the glass sphere. He saw the tears on Taman's face. "Taman," he called out. His voice echoed in the massive chamber. Taman pressed his hands harder against the glass. His mouth moved, forming the shape of a word he could not speak. The guards threw Doha into another glass sphere, about 20 feet away from his son. A barrier of energy separated them. They could see each other clearly, but they could not touch. "Perfect," Dr. Veth said. "Now they can see each other. The bond will activate. Begin the extraction again." The machine roared to life. The pulling sensation returned, stronger this time. Taman felt it tearing at him. He fell to his knees, gasping in silent pain. But now his father was there. And seeing his father gave him strength. Doha pressed his hands against his own glass prison. "Taman, look at me. Look at me, son." Taman raised his eyes to meet his father's gaze. "Do not be afraid," Doha said. His voice was calm and warm, despite everything. "I am here. I am with you. Whatever happens, we are together." The sensors went crazy. Energy levels spiked dramatically. Dr. Veth watched in amazement as the readings climbed higher and higher. "Incredible," he whispered. "The emotional resonance is off the charts. The bond between them is producing more energy than our entire fleet." But something was wrong. The machine was designed to store the energy and use it later. But the energy coming from Doha and Taman was too pure, too strong, too wild. It did not flow into the storage tanks. Instead, it began to build up in the crystals, making them glow brighter and brighter. "Warning," a technician said nervously. "Energy levels are exceeding safe limits." "Reduce the extraction rate," Dr. Veth ordered. "I cannot. The energy is not coming from the machine. It is coming from them." Emperor Vorath leaned forward on his platform. He was watching the two humans in their glass prisons. The man and the boy. The father and the son. They were looking at each other through the barriers, and something was flowing between them. Something powerful. Something Vorath could not understand. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Nothing, my lord. They are just looking at each other." "That is impossible. Looking cannot produce energy." But it was not just looking. It was so much more than that. Doha was pouring all of his love into that gaze. Every memory of holding Taman as a baby. Every night spent telling stories in their tiny room. Every moment of joy and pain they had shared. Every sacrifice he had made. All of it was flowing through his eyes into his son's heart. And Taman was receiving it all. The boy had never been able to speak. He had never been able to say the words that filled his heart. For 7 years, he had kept them locked inside, a dam holding back an ocean of love and gratitude and need. But now, looking at his father, he felt the dam begin to crack. "Taman," Doha said softly. The machine was screaming now, alarms blaring everywhere. Crystals were starting to shatter. But Doha did not notice. He only saw his son. "No matter what happens, I want you to know something." Tears fell from his eyes. But he was smiling. That same gentle smile he always gave his son at the end of a hard day. "I am proud of you. You are the best thing I ever did. You are the reason I wake up every morning. You are everything, Taman. Everything." Something broke inside the boy. Not something bad. Something that had been locked for too long. The words that had been trapped in his throat for 7 years suddenly rushed upward. His mouth opened. His voice, unused for so long, cracked and rasped out, but the word came out. "Dad." One word. One small word. But it carried 7 years of silence. 7 years of unspoken love. 7 years of wanting to say something, anything, to the man who had given up everything for him. The word hit the machine like a nuclear bomb. The energy that exploded from Taman was not measurable. It was beyond anything the Valorian instruments could record. It was pure, concentrated love, given voice for the first time. The glass spheres shattered. The crystals exploded. The entire machine came apart in a cascade of light and sound, but the energy did not destroy. It did something far more dangerous. It reached out through the palace, through the city, through the entire Valorian psychic network. And everywhere it touched, it awakened something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years. Emotions. Every Valorian in the palace collapsed. Emperor Varth fell from his viewing platform, his ancient body convulsing. Dr. Veth dropped to his knees, tears streaming from his eyes for the first time in his life. Guards throughout the corridors clutched their chests and screamed. They were feeling. For the first time in 10 millennia, they were feeling, and they could not handle it. Doha stumbled through the wreckage toward his son. Taemin was lying on the ground, exhausted but alive. The boy looked up at his father with shining eyes. "Dad," he said again. His voice was rough and unpracticed, but it was the most beautiful sound Doha had ever heard. Doha fell to his knees and gathered his son into his arms. He held him tight, tighter than he had ever held anything. "I heard you," he whispered into Taemin's hair. "I heard you." "Dad," Taemin said again, as if testing the word, tasting it. "Dad, Dad, Dad." He said it over and over, 7 years of silence pouring out in that single beautiful word. Around them, the palace was in chaos. The Valorian Empire was crumbling. The most powerful force in the galaxy was being brought to its knees, all because a little boy finally said the word he had been saving for his whole life. The throne room was filled with dust and broken crystal. The beautiful black marble floor was cracked in 100 places. The ceiling, once so high it disappeared into darkness, had partially collapsed. Weak light filtered through the gaps. Emperor Varth lay on the floor beside his fallen throne. His ancient body was curled up like a child's. His yellow eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. Tears fell from them in an endless stream, running down his blue skin and pooling on the cold stone. He had been crying for 3 days. The psychic shockwave that came from Taemin had done something impossible. It had cracked open the walls that the Valorians had built around their hearts 10,000 years ago. Every Valorian in the Empire was now experiencing emotions for the first time, and they were drowning in them. For a species that had evolved to suppress all feeling, the sudden flood was overwhelming. They felt joy and sorrow, love and fear, hope and despair, all at once. They did not know how to process these things. They did not have the words for them. They only knew that something inside them had changed forever. Princess Valena walked through the ruined throne room. Her own eyes were red from crying. But unlike her father and most of her people, she was still standing. Perhaps because she had already begun to feel before the shockwave. Perhaps because her curiosity had prepared her for something different. She found Doha and Taemin sitting in the wreckage near the destroyed resonance machine. The father was holding his son in his lap, both of them covered in dust and small cuts. They looked exhausted but peaceful. Valana approached slowly. She was no longer sure how to act. Everything she had known was gone. Her certainty, her coldness, her sense of superiority. All of it had been washed away. "Human," she said. Her voice cracked. She had never cried before, and her throat was raw. "Kang Doha." Doha looked up at her. There was no fear in his eyes. There was no anger either. He just looked tired and calm. "Princess Valena," he said. "What happened?" She asked. "What did you do to us?" Doha looked down at his son. Taemin was sleeping now, his small fingers still holding onto his father's shirt. His face was peaceful for the first time in days. "I did not do anything," Doha said quietly. "He did. The boy? But how? He's just a child. He does not even speak." "He spoke," Doha said. And despite everything, he smiled. He finally spoke. And when he did, all the love he had been holding inside came out at once. "Your machines could not contain it. Your walls could not stop it. Because love is not a weapon that can be controlled. It is a force that must be shared. Valana did not understand, but she wanted to understand. For the first time in her life, she wanted something with her whole heart. What was that? That energy? Our scientists called it emotional resonance. But that does not explain what I felt when it touched me. Doha thought for a moment. You felt what we feel. What humans feel every day. Love, pain, fear, hope. All the things you removed from yourself so long ago. Why would anyone want to feel these things? Valana asked. Her voice was small and confused. They hurt. This pain in my chest, these tears in my eyes, this heaviness in my heart. It is terrible. How do you live with it? Doha looked at her with something like compassion. Because the pain means we are alive. Because every tear comes with a memory that matters. Because every hurt is connected to something we love. If you feel pain for someone, it means you care about them. If you feel loss, it means you had something precious. The pain is not separate from the joy. They are two sides of the same thing. Valana sat down on a piece of broken crystal. She did not care about dignity anymore. She was too tired and too confused. We thought we were stronger without emotions, she said. We thought they made us weak. That is why our ancestors removed them. And did it make you stronger? Doha asked. Valana thought about her empire. She thought about the thousands of years of conquest and destruction. She thought about the empty throne room and her father crying on the floor. No, she admitted. It made us efficient. It made us organized. It made us powerful in battle. But strong? I do not think so. A strong person would not be destroyed by a child saying one word. Doha nodded slowly. You became machines. You could calculate and conquer, but you could not connect. You won wars, but never understood why the people you defeated kept fighting. You crushed civilizations, but never knew why they refused to give up. And now you understand. Because they loved something more than they feared death. Yes, Valana looked at the sleeping boy in Doha's arms. He broke our entire empire with one word. Love is stronger than any weapon, Doha said. Stronger than any empire. Stronger than any logic. That is what makes humans strong. Not our bodies, not our technology, not our intelligence. Our hearts. Our ability to feel so deeply that it changes everything around us. Valana was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, more human. What happens now? Doha looked around at the ruined palace. I do not know, but I think your people will need help. Feeling emotions for the first time is overwhelming. Humans learn to handle it slowly, over years, starting from childhood. Your people are trying to learn in days. Will you help us? Doha considered this. For 7 years, the Valorians had enslaved his people. They had treated humans like animals. They had beaten him nearly to death. They had tried to use his son as a battery, but he looked at Valana's face, wet with tears and twisted with confusion, and he saw something he recognized. He saw someone who was lost and afraid, and did not know how to live in this new world. Yes, he said, I will help. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The Valorian Empire did not collapse all at once, but it could no longer function the way it had before. Soldiers refused to fight because they suddenly felt the weight of the lives they had taken. Officers could not give orders because they felt guilt for the first time. The psychic network that connected all Valorians had become a stream of shared emotions, binding them together in ways they had never experienced. Humans were no longer servants. They became teachers. They taught the Valorians how to love and how to grieve, how to hope and how to fear, how to feel without being destroyed by feeling that Doha refused every offer of power or leadership. He did not want to rule anyone. He only wanted one thing: a home, he told Emperor Varth, who was slowly recovering but would never be the same. A small piece of land on New Terra, somewhere I can raise my son in peace. Varth, still learning to understand the concept of gratitude, agreed. 5 years passed. A young man stood on a green hill overlooking a human city. The city was new and clean, built from the ashes of the old world. Humans walked freely through its streets, laughing and working and living without chains. The young man's name was Kang Tiemann. He was 12 years old now, tall and strong. He spoke clearly and often, making up for 7 years of silence. He had become a leader among the young humans, a symbol of hope and change. Beside him stood his father. Doha was older now. His hair was gray, and his body carried the scars of his beating. But his eyes were warm and bright, and he stood straight and proud. "Dad," Tiemann said. He still loved saying that word. "Do you remember what you told me in the chamber?" Doha smiled. "That I was proud of you?" Tiemann shook his head. "No, not the words. You smiled. In the worst moment of our lives, when they were tearing us apart, when everything was breaking, you smiled at me. Why?" Doha thought about that moment. The glass prisons, the screaming machines, the certainty of death. "Because I was looking at you," he said simply. "And looking at you has always made me happy. Even in the darkest moment, seeing your face reminded me of everything good in my life. Your mother giving birth to you, your first steps. Every night I spent telling you stories. How could I not smile? You are my greatest joy." Tiemann's eyes filled with tears. Even after 5 years, he was still making up for all the crying he could not do before. "That is when I knew I had to speak," he said. "I saw you smile, and I realized that you needed to hear my voice. You had given me everything, and I had given you nothing back. Not even a word. And in that moment, I decided that if I could only say one thing in my entire life, it would be your name." Doha put his arm around his son's shoulders. They stood together on the hill, looking out at the free city and the blue sky and the future stretching out before them. "Dad," Tiemann said softly. "Yes? I love you." Doha pulled his son close. His heart was full, so full it almost hurt. But it was a good kind of hurt. The kind that meant everything was exactly right. "I love you too, Tiemann. More than anything in the universe." Below them, the city continued to grow. Humans and Valorians walked together, learning from each other, changing each other. The empire was gone, but something new was being built. Something better. And it had all started with one small word, spoken by a silent boy who finally found his voice. "Dad," the most powerful word in any language.